Welcome to B Cube Press Sunday morning. We are on the first Sunday of the month, which means I get to have the guests I want to have. And today I am blessed. Those of you who know what we do here at B Cube know that when the Catholic Court, or I guess I shouldn't call them the Catholic Court, they're technically the Supreme Court, but they're frankly a bunch of Ivy League Catholics uh, who have decided to impose their religious views and political views on us as opposed to justice. What did I say that with my outside voice? Yeah. Have overturned Roe v. Wade after each one of them stood up in front of the Senate and said, precedence is important. No, we're not going to do that. So, anyway, the lying bastards have done it. Now, looking at that, over here at B Cubed, I called up all my best friends, everybody who has ever been involved, except for one. She lives in Scotland, kind of busy right now. Edited a B Cubed anthology and said, let's put together an anthology in 100 days. And we're doing it. Although you may have heard the old adage that says 9 women cannot make a baby in a month. We are getting that puppy done. And so we got the editors, we're doing it, and we've got some wonderful writers on board. In addition to the ones you see here, you're going to be reading Jane Yolen, Jim Wright, Adam Troy Castro, and some really wonderful stuff. But with us today, which is where we're here, we have Linda Hardie. Wave, Linda. Now, Linda, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a writer and a college instructor. I teach English comp to unwilling students. And right now I'm concentrating in my own writing on short stories, although I'm also writing middle grade novels and sending them off to agents.
Well, thank you. Now, you're the only poet I have with us this morning. But it's worth mentioning that we have got about 15 poems in this book, which is about triple the normal for a BQ press. Now, moving down the list, we have got, almost, do I get to still call you a teacher, or are you now officially a former teacher, Samantha?
So, hi, I'm Samantha Bryant, and I am a former teacher. I taught for 27 years, and North Carolina finally made it untenable for me to continue this last spring, and so I left. So now I am working as a content strategist for Fidelity, which sounds so hoity-toity, but it's basically just a web writing job. And as a writer, I'm best known for my menopausal superhero series, and I like to play around with all different kinds of short fiction.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. Now, another one that has wowed our editors on this team, Mara. Tell us about yourself and be kind while you're doing so.
Hi, I'm Mara. I am actually currently in college still. I'm getting my master's in media technology and democracy from American University. And I'm also the communications and programming associate of a nonprofit called The Giving Square. And we teach kids about philanthropy and basically how to have empathy, how to notice problems in your community, how to be kind to one another. So my work kind of involves me being in school and me being in school with grade schoolers, middle schoolers, and have a lot of fun.
That is fun. Now, right after a woman whose career is teaching kids to be kind, we have someone whose career is teaching kids to hit each other with battle axes. Andrew, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. I'm assuming that's an allusion to either me being Canadian or writing for role-playing games.
You gotta love it. So you wrote us, Andrew, a interesting story, Santa Maria.
Mm-hmm.
I think sometimes I should send an insulin syringe with every book. Unlike the rest of these folks, your book, your story has, I believe, one of the most syrupy, sappy endings that I've ever published in BQ Press. Congratulations.
Oh, that's a high bar. Yeah, yeah. It did, tend towards the maudlin at the end, but in a book with such a strong message, I kind of wanted to, balance it out a little bit.
Well, I'm glad you did, because it was a fun story and it impressed our editorial team, and they loved it. So
Well, I
go
did
ahead.
cut down on the use of the M dash, so that was for you, Bob.
I don't mind the M dash. If any of you follow me on Facebook, you might on occasionally hear me comment on the M dash. It's not using it, because I tell you what, the M dash has become the say all and end all of punctuation in writing these days, and I don't mind you using it. I like it so much better than the ellipse. But for God's sake, people, if you're going to use it right. There are no, unless you're a journalist, there is no space before or after an M dash. That is for journalism uses. Oh, I'm sorry. I keep using my outside voice. But that said, those of you who knew, we said we found the Supreme Court declaration that took away the rights of half the population of our country. So a bunch of politicians could claim victory when they went in for their reelection. And then, anybody here have an opinion on Kansas? What that told us? Oh, go ahead. Yes.
I think that I think it made it more obvious and clear, hopefully, that it's not just a question of Republican versus Democrat, or like certain ideals in one party versus the other. There is a large voice in this country that really wanted to keep Roe v. Wade and was for Roe v. Wade. And so having those people in a historically red, more conservative Republican state come out and say, no, we want to keep these rights. It meant a lot to me, especially because I really want to get my MFA from the University of Kansas. And I was watching that so closely, because I was like, I don't think I could live in that state for 3 years if they overturn it. So for me, it was a really personal choice, and also a really big one.
Yeah, I lived in Kansas for a couple of years, and it's in a way it didn't surprise me, because I've met Kansas women, and they don't take it kindly when you try to tell them what to do in any front, and especially on something as personal as their own bodies. And I was so happy. I think I stood up and cheered when I started reading about the what happened there.
Do you have any thoughts there, Linda?
Just what everybody else has said. I mean, it's a great decision, a great victory. It small in this big fight, but it shows there's hope, and we can always use hope.
Right. Kansas doesn't have a forward-thinking reputation overall. You know, they tried to make teaching evolution illegal again in my lifetime.
That's it's what I find is that politicians who depend on the Christian fringe elements to get elected and win their primaries often will support measures that most people don't want. Our opening poem by Jane Yolen is called Kansas Rules. In appreciation of Kansas, our cover is a sunflower. for this book. And the title of the book is Post-Roe Alternatives Fighting Back. Okay. So we are all over Kansas, appreciating it. Now, I'm not going to ask you, where did you first hear of BQ Press? But I will ask you this. Is there anything, I mean, when you wrote this, did you guys have any, you obviously all writers. Did you have, were you, what did you find out there when you went looking for a place to market your stuff? Or did you write this just for us?
I wrote this back when Kavanaugh was being considered for the Supreme Court. We had a rally in downtown Reno, thousands and thousands of women and men, and I was one of the speakers. And I wrote this to, show the importance of what we knew was going to happen with Kavanaugh on the court.
Side note, next year we're releasing first of a trilogy on set in current events. When we had to name a Supreme Court justice, that corresponded to Kavanaugh, Beer Boy was the name that we tagged it with. And my God, it was so hard to come up with another name because Beer Boy was so much fun. So what other, I mean, because writing here is a form of activism. It's a form of speaking out. So on the rest of you, I mean, you stood up in front of 1,000 people and spoke on the subject. Where's the activism for the rest of you guys in this?
Well, I know for my story, I tend to write about things that scare me or upset me. Sometimes I don't know that's what I'm doing. Like I read the story afterwards and go, oh, I see. But in this case, it was pretty direct. When Texas passed Senate Bill 8, I saw the writing on the wall. I saw where we were going. And no offense to Texans in general. I know many kind people from Texas, but I don't think that highly of the state politically. And I've often thought that one of the times it tried to secede from the Union, maybe we should have let it. But gosh, when Senate Bill 8, which was they call it their heartbeat bill, where they eliminate abortion so early in the process that many women don't even know they're pregnant yet, I was so pissed. There's just no other word for it. I was so very angry. And that's when I wrote my story. Mine's called No Country for Young Women. And it's pretty close to a realistic story, but it posits that Texas has gone further and is then going to, after abortion, go after even just birth control. And so I'm exploring that through the lens of a man who always thought this was none of his business. Mm-hmm. And I was really happy with where the story came out. And you asked earlier about, where did I try to submit it? Because I wrote, that was like 2021. And I did submit it to a few literary magazines, but normally I'm a speculative fiction writer. So I don't have a lot of places I generally submit to because I don't generally write realistic work. But when I saw the call for this, I was like, this is perfect. And obviously you guys must have thought so too, because you took the story.
I tell you what, I will not give away the ending, but your conversation between your male guy and the
his longtime friend
and his long-standing female friend, wherein he has it kind of explained to him, was wonderful. I mean, I thought you did a great job there. Now, question real quick for Kara, did you have anything to add on that? I'm sorry, Mara.
Yeah. I also wrote my story back in the fall of 2021. I wrote it actually as the beginning part of a series of short speculative fiction stories for my undergraduate thesis. I got one of my bachelor's in literature, and it was an exploration of fear. And so I was going through being a woman and like projecting that further and further out. And originally, I had told my professor, who I was writing this under, I told her that, oh, this story is about 5 years in the future. I said, this story is just the start of a speculative fiction collection, because that's also the kind of thing I like to write. And generally, it's further in the future, but this was just like a start. And then the leak happened, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just pulled a Margaret Atwood. I was like, I just wrote this story. I didn't do anything with it. I submitted it to graduate. But, and I had so many conflicting emotions about one of my fears. One of the fears I talked about had just occurred, had just happened. Especially, I have some underlying health conditions. So for me, it was even like a medical necessity. Like I felt more than just protesting for myself. It was like, this is my life on the line. And I live in Washington, D.C. So we had all the protests and everything going on there. And I just sat on the story. Honestly, I was kind of in shock, and I was involved in other activist activities at the time. And then after I graduated, and over the summer, that professor sent me a link to, I think, Authors Published or something. It was a newsletter, and it was a call for themed story submissions. And when I read the little blurb of what you guys were looking for, I'm like, oh my gosh, I already have that. And it was just kind of a crazy time for me to kind of, that whole experience.
Your professor sent you a copy of our open call?
Yeah, your open call was on a newsletter that one of their friends puts together, that they went around and get all these submissions.
Yeah, I subscribe to Authors Published as well. And I don't remember if that's where I read about this, but it seems likely.
Yeah, so there's a newsletter going around with your guys' call on it.
Hey, you know what? We're only 6 years old, and we've only got about 20 books out. But by God, it's fun because you talked about prophecy. Andrew, you were in our first book, weren't you? Alternative
for I'd submitted something for every, but so far this is the second one that I've been in. The first one would be Space Force.
Oh, yeah. Alternative Truths, our very first book. We wrote it as a mocking the concept of a Trump presidency. It turned into, well, not only did it spend 6 days as number one, which we like, but it turned into a book of prophecy. And I mean, frighteningly. But I mean, when you turn loose science fiction writers and say, hey, what's the worst that could happen? And they tell you, and then you have Trump as a president, let's just say it was frightening. But so, yeah, that's kind of where we were. Now, we have had a lot of stories came in, and we used several, including yours, Andrew, about the idea of border crossings, because free travel is a fundamental right in America, you know, to be able to cross borders. But then again, we used to think so was voting. And look what's happened. But the whole concept of, what do you guys see? I mean, do you see us successfully fighting back, or do you see this continuing? I mean, I'm scared to death when I looked at the polls and realized that Dr. Oz is on the ragged edge of winning the Senate seat in Pennsylvania based on recent polling, because they've got the full power of Fox. The story 6, they are mentioning Dr. Oz in a positive manner, or the Democratic candidate in a negative manner. 6 times more than all of the other candidates combined. So the entire weight of Murdoch's hate machine is focused on Pennsylvania. And Mitch McConnell sent him $15 million. What it was, Dr. Oz was photographed kissing a Screech Weasel's Hollywood star. Oh,
The former president.
please tell me he didn't get down on the ground and kiss the orange one's Hollywood. Oh. There's just some things that you just can't live with. So, from where you guys are, I mean, you guys are imaginative people. Do you see us recovering from this, recapturing, or do you see us this as step one on the slippery slope to complete fascism?
It depends on whether we get enough reasonable people to vote in November and, keep our democracy, because that's what's at stake, is our democracy. And if we don't get enough people to come out and hold the branches of government, we've lost the Supreme Court, and we're on the verge of losing the Congress. Nevada has one of the Senate races that is very vital, with Catherine Cortez Masto running for re-election, and somebody with a famous name in Nevada running against her. His whole family, Laxalt's whole family, has come out against him because he is the black sheep of the family and doesn't have the standards and respect of his family, his famous political family. But he is doing well in the polls. And if we can't get the voters out this November, I see this as it's not going to be a slippery slope. We're going to fall off the cliff into fascism.
There is a, who here is familiar with a blogger by the name of Jim Wright? Okay, I would urge you guys, if you either of you are Facebookers that are not here, go follow a fellow by the name of Jim Wright. By the way, he's in this book with you. His story is tentatively titled "Snip Snip." About he voluntarily. We're talking about a guy who's, he's a tough guy. Just put it that way. But he said, "I'm getting a vasectomy," and then the next day he got assigned to go on an exercise where he should have been laying down with an ice pack. So he tells us the story of his vasectomy. But we're also publishing a short piece from him, a short book, because he's got a very simple explanation for America if you want to avoid fascism. And it simply is, show the fuck up.
Yeah.
Get out.
Like Linda was saying about complacency. And
yes.
It looks like somebody mentioned it in the chat too. So far as how I feel from time to time about where this was going, it's a complete seesaw depending on what's going on in the news and where I am in my own mental state that day. There are definitely signs for hope. Kansas is a huge sign for hope. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you go too far, what you do is you galvanize your enemies. And, and it's no coincidence that galvanize starts with gal, G-A-L, because guess who we need to get out there and who we need to vote. Yeah. And I have a 22-year-old daughter, so I'm, a little more tied into that age group than you might expect for an old lady like me. And they give me so much hope. Those are the new voters, people who have only been able to vote for a few years, and they see pretty darn clearly, and are pushing the older people in their lives to see clearly as well.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle at this point, though. What with the voter suppression, gerrymandering, Fox News, disinformation coming from the Senate down. You guys got your work.
Yeah, it is amazing the power of Fox News to just lie with a straight face.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you go to where I keep my stuff recording, I will watch Rachel Maddow. I will watch the Colbert Show, and I record. Oh God, the Fox News guy that practices the stupid concerned look.
What? Tucker?
Huh?
Tucker?
Tucker, yeah.
Also
Tucker
known as
Carlson.
Tucker.
My God, I've never heard anybody who can take truth and twist it so hideously that if you know the truth, it's like your ears want to just shut, so to save your brain from the spiraling pain.
Yeah.
But if you don't know the truth, it's like, wow, I guess that makes sense. You know.
But it's not even knowing the truth. It's just looking at everything he says, everything he puts forward through a rational lens. And so many people don't or aren't willing to do that.
We don't have enough critical thinking going on in this country.
Yeah.
I see that when I teach college, and that's one of the things that I am charged with is teaching students critical thinking, because that's necessary to get through college, and it's necessary to be a good citizen in our world.
I think it's critical thinking, and then there's also the tendency for people to stay within their media bubble. And so you follow people on Facebook who have the same opinions as you, and the algorithm learns that. And there's been studies shown that it will slowly and slowly show you more and more radical content, not just on the right, but, you know, depending on your interests. But it's really easy, I think, for people to look outside just Fox News, but they're following Breitbart, but they're following, you know, other people that are kind of doubling down and sharing the same information. And I agree, critical thinking really lacking in schools. It's something we should really be looking at for curriculum development, but we also should really be looking at media literacy, because I think a lot of people take Google and Facebook kind of as the truth, when in reality you have to look at firsthand sources. You have to look at history. And I know history has come under so much fire lately. But that's kind of how, as a 24-year-old, who's in college, that's my view on it.
Hey, ma'am, you're talking. I mean, not all of us, but I don't know Linda's age, but I'm assuming we're somewhere near the same age. You know, that means when we graduated high school, you know, Roe v. Wade was the law of the land.
Yeah.
You know, and that was 4 years earlier. And it's an interesting thing. Roe v. Wade did not make everybody want to run out and get an abortion. Mm-hmm. Abortion was still not a popular decision in for young women, but it was a choice they could make then. Mm-hmm. And that's a big difference between, you know, that, oh, look, now we can abort babies. No, now you can make the right choice. Anybody here want to throw 2 cents in on the heartbeat laws?
It's not a heartbeat. Yeah. It's just some cells vibrating. I mean, there's no heart there yet. There's no human. There's nothing. Just a few cells.
If I took heart cells out of my heart, put them in a medium that allowed them to stay alive, they would continue to pulse?
Yeah.
Oh my God. So that means I could never kill those cells?
Yeah.
And that's possibly, the heartbeat law relies on such a incredible level of stupidity.
Mm-hmm.
the American voter that I
Mhm.
just I can't fathom it sometimes. Because a heartbeat without any brain cells, well, I guess that's a Republican.
You think they have hearts?
Yeah.
Hey, they got a mechanism for pumping blood.
Yeah.
The empathetic concept of a heart as a center of core of the empathy in the human being um, is I'm sure that Mara could write us a paper on that. Uh, but now, where Andrew, where exactly are you from? Kansas?
No, Canada, up
Yeah, that's what I
up by
thought.
Vancouver.
I
So
have a writer from Kansas. I think is also in the book
Mhm.
that made a point of after Kansas happened that he said he got together with his mother, his sister, his daughter, his grandmother, and they made a concerted effort to get to the polls as a group
Yeah.
to get down there and vote. You see the campaign, plan your vote. We've got to get not just women, but we've got to, women have got to bring their allies with them. They got to bring their brothers and fathers and husbands, boyfriends uh, with them to the polls. They've got to communicate. This is important. Um, but what is do any of you have thoughts that says what's next? I mean, I don't think we ever got a clear feeling. It says we could be on the slippery slope to fascism. Um, but what's the next set of rights that are on the table?
Well,
I
they're going to
think
go after birth control, of course. Is that what you were going to say, Maura?
I was gonna say birth control and gay marriage, and and if my powers of prophecy are right again, which I'm really hoping they're not, my next story was about the overturning of Oberfell and how that would impact people. So
Now, on that, I think I am with you on they're going to attack contraception, but I actually believe that gay marriage or marriage equality is safer than we might think. The Gordian knot has been tied. Imagine the legal consequences of trying to untie the Gordian knot that is marriage equality.
Mhm.
well,
I love it. Counter it. Go ahead.
I'm not saying that it won't be difficult, but that is one of the places their sights are definitely set. I think at least two of the Supreme Court justices have stated that they disagree with that ruling and that they would like it to be overturned. And I have Republican family, which is how I'm kind of how I'm plugged into their thoughts, and they all are really wanting to target this. And I think one of the problems, there's a lot of problems in this country, but one of the things that we don't really see is that Democrats are not as left as Republicans are moving right, and we keep compromising. So as a whole, our country is moving further and further right, even though Democrats are left. And the issue with that is that the Republicans have a long-term strategy. Democrats are more reactionary, but Republicans wanted to overturn Roe v. Wade from when it was passed, and they finally got here. So they're going to set their sights on birth control. They're going to set their sights on gay marriage, and they're going to take that long game. And maybe it won't be next year, but I think if that's really what they want to do, and they've stated that's what they want to do, they're going to find a way to do it. And we're going to all say, but we've already had these laws. How could they take them away? We didn't see it coming, and that's going to be an ongoing issue unless the Supreme Court is addressed.
Yeah.
Let me ask you
And a politician can make a lot of hay just fighting the good fight. Doesn't matter if they untie that Gordian knot. Doesn't matter if they succeed. For decades, they can fight that fight and build their own power. And, their power base will grow. Their income will grow. You know, we've seen the super PACs. We've seen how those have been misused.
Now, I had a question here for Mara. Yeah, I mean, the issue is what your point there, Andrew, is, and I think you're correct, that the issue is more valuable to the politicians than a solution.
Yeah.
If Roe v. Wade had been, if under Clinton we had actually passed it into law when the ability existed, wow. I think they looked at it and said that would impact our ability to do fundraisers because we don't have the boogeyman. Well, guess what? The boogeyman came. Now, I got a question for you, Mara. You talked about the Democrats not fighting, compromising the country, moving to the right, and Democrats getting sucked to the middle over it. What are the first 3 Democratic primaries?
Primary, like voting primaries?
Yeah, and primaries for the presidency.
Like states?
Yeah.
Or the candidates?
State.
The dates are, geez, I'm so bad on the top of my head. I have them on my calendar.
Let's try Ohio.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try New Hampshire. Okay, and I forget the third. So let's take and hold the primaries, the first primaries in the whitest, most conservative states that you can, and then ask ourselves why the Democrats are getting sucked to the right. Okay, so let's bring California, let's bring South Carolina, let's bring Georgia, let's bring some other ethnically mixed states forward in this concept. Let's not wait till Super Tuesday. Let's do this, because by letting it be the whitest, most conservative states get to basically select and reinforce the front runner, you force that, you drive that to happen. Now, I will shut up now and let you guys counter that argument.
I don't think it needs to be countered. I think you're right, but I also think it's deliberate. And I think that there's too much money and power involved in keeping these conservative white states as front runners. I just think that it's intentional, like gerrymandering. Like we're trying to make it harder for certain minorities and certain groups of people to vote. As a whole, that's what's happening. And some people, they don't get Tuesday off to vote. They can't leave their minimum wage job that they need to support their families. It's really great to say get out and vote, but the Democratic Party is more diverse. But the problem with that diversity is a lot of those voices are intentionally silenced. So I agree with you, but I also think it's not going to change anytime soon.
Well, there's an old saying. I used to do investigations of when a bad accident happened. And one of the early adages that got beaten into me by my mentor was things are the way they are because that's the way management and substitute people in power, that's the way management wants it. That's the way the power brokers want it. But back to Linda and Samantha. You guys have been letting us have a conversation up here, but not weighing in as much. What do you guys want to hear talked about right now? Really?
Well, the marriage equality is a big thing, and I do agree with Maura that I agree with you and Maura. It is a Gordian knot, but they are going to go after it and eventually chop it up because it's not something you have to untie. You take a sword to a Gordian knot and you can cut it loose a lot faster than you can untie it. And that's what they're going to do.
Alexander, great reference. I like it.
Yeah. And, and also they've been planning this since before Reagan, all of this. and they look at the long term. The Republicans look at the long term, and they can see that it's starting to speed up because we're getting to that slope and we are going to go off the edge like lemmings. Although the lemmings is a myth that was started by Disney photographers who wanted something interesting, and they were throwing these poor little rodents off the edge of a cliff and filming it. Lemmings don't actually rush to the sea, but it's still a good image for what's happening in our politics, because we are, and that's actually a better image. We are being thrown off this cliff into the sea right now, and we've got to find out how to stop that tide. And
It
that
is
means getting people out to vote, getting our people out to vote.
just like Jim said, just show the fuck up. Forgive the profanity, but I get to say it 3 times before I get rated at a ranked as a worst level on the rankings. But
I think Mara was right when she talked about how the Republicans are definitely playing a long game, and that they have like long trajectories they're looking at. And also that, a lot of those trajectories don't really have anything to do with what they believe is right, or just. It's about what will keep us in power. The whole,
Money.
I can go on quite a long rant as a former public school teacher about privatization. And my entire teaching career, public education has been under attack. When to me, public education is one of the most quintessentially American ideas that ever happened. The idea that just by being a citizen here, you got an education, and it was free, and it was available to everyone. That is, to me, the heart of what America is supposed to be about. And it's been under attack. Probably it's been under attack my whole life. I just didn't know it was under attack until I was in there as a teacher.
well, just like you probably didn't know you were teaching critical race theory until the Republicans ran the ads saying that you were.
I thought I was just teaching that people are people and we should treat each other as such, but okay.
I know I keep wanting to go get a substitute teacher certificate so I can go be a substitute teacher and teach history. And I figure I'll get about 3 days into it before they find out about it. And
Yes,
like,
then you'll be in trouble for indoctrination.
Yeah, it's interesting that to the south of me in America, they're throwing out these little nuggets of hatred, like the critical race theory. Whereas up here, we're going through our own issues with truth and reconciliation, and we're kind of embracing the horrors and the hatred and the violence of our past. And we're not there yet, but we just had a national day of recognition for the way we've been treating our indigenous cultures. And that's kind of what some of the parties in the States are fighting against, because you have a similar history, but not embracing that, not acknowledging it. So we're trying to do that up here. We're not successful yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah, culturally, I think Americans have a hard time with apologizing, with admitting that we did something wrong.
And we all know Canadians don't have that issue. We apologize at the drop of a hat.
That's your reputation anyway. Yeah.
well, I mean, anybody there want to defend the incarceration of the Japanese Americans in the internment camps? But God, the uproar over the concept of that apology.
Yeah.
Which took place in my lifetime, probably yours too, Mr. Lucas, and but I just, we are. You want to talk? You want to get somebody? You ever want to have a talk on critical race theory, and ignore the actual technical elements of it, because most people don't understand its origins as critical theory, and basically the concept that power remains with the powerful and laws are established to ensure that continuation of power. That's critical theory at its heart. And go in and talk about the ability to develop wealth, generational wealth. You want to talk about white privilege or things like that. The idea that you're not allowed to teach in school the concept of generational wealth is just boggles the mind. But we're getting way off topic here.
Well, it all connects.
It all
Yeah.
connects. Yeah. Yeah.
So
It goes back to the people with power wanting to hold on to that power beyond what our country is founded on. Because our country, America, has been founded on, supposedly, the idea of voting and having citizens serve, and not, corporations are not supposed to be people.
they are now,
Yeah.
except I have yet to see the death penalty.
Yeah,
for
yeah.
corporations.
Somebody in our comments, it's gone further down now, but somebody talked about how the rich will always have access to abortion. And I think that that's one of the keys is like, I've often argued that if you're going to have a public office, you should be required to use all the public systems. You ride public transportation to and from work. Your child attends the public school that they are districted to attend. You use the state employees or federal employees retirement system and healthcare. And I think, lo and behold, if all the people making the laws were required to use use what they're putting in place for everyone else, they would suddenly care if it was any good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You mean like President Biden using the train to go home on the weekends?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can take a cute guy with a little headset with him, but yeah.
Well, we've got a story in the book, and I can't remember who wrote it. I think a woman by the name of Kurth that said no matter how well intentioned, the powerful and the elite just sometimes have no idea what the consequences of the laws they pass are. And they just don't get it. That
was it the guy, was he in West Virginia? There was I don't have the details at my fingertips, but shortly after Roe v. Wade was overturned, there was this conservative politician on the news, all tearful because he realized the effect it was going to have on some particular young woman that he heard about. And it's maybe you should have thought about that before you voted.
Yeah, another story in the book is called the Cobra Effect. I talked about when India passed a law putting a bounty on cobras, kind of like Texas and pregnant women. But instead of having its intended consequence, cobra breeding became a huge industry. And it's just, you got to know what you're trying to do. You got to know who you're dealing with. You got to just the idea, though. I mean, it just twists my gut of forced birth.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
I mean, I just don't think you can take it anywhere that says that I got a 13-year-old granddaughter. And if the idea, if she got raped, the idea that she would be forced to respect the parental rights of that rapist and have his daughter, have his baby. There's just like a great big giant no.
Nobody gets pregnant by themselves.
Yeah.
And I saw a meme on social media. Do you know what you call mammals who are forced to give birth? Livestock. Women are livestock.
Allow me to introduce you to Paula Hammond, who isn't on today, but she wrote a story that I know I'm going to get hate mail on. which is exactly how to ensure a steady, what did she call it? Paula, well, I look at over here that says how to ensure a steady supply of infants. And it is a basically a manual on how to run a breeding farm.
Mm.
Only they call them cows instead of women. Um, and it's horrifying.
Yeah.
Well,
Of course,
as a woman, I assure you, I've been called a cow before.
Yeah.
of course, right next to that is Deb Godfrey, who writes a story about a women's club. Oh yeah, they play mahjong on Thursday afternoons, and then 4 days a week they practice shooting. And in a discussion with an officer, she says, "Yes, I know that's not the normal place to put a bullseye, but the women seem to like it better there."
I'm going to have to get new targets made for when I go shooting next. I
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, it says, there's no rule that says it has to be the head or the heart, is there? So no,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm excited about this book and some of the great writers we have in it. And it's clear just looking here. Andrew, we've got you, a Canadian ally. We never forget our allies.
Nope.
You know, Mara, you're out there, you're the cutting edge of the next generation. You know, that is so cool. I hope you get to teach these kids how to have empathy. How do you teach somebody to have empathy?
We go through a case study of homelessness, actually, and we show videos of people interviewing homeless people. But before the videos, we have like a quiz, and we like myths about homelessness. Like, do you think it's their fault? Why do you think someone might end up on the street? And then we show these videos of actual homeless people telling their story, and we do exercises and games after related to why, like, where did you hear this misinformation? How could you spread the information? What impacted you the most? How can you help? What are ideas you have? And then the kids find their own issue. We give them, resources, but they identify an issue that they care about and an organization they care about, and they kind of go through the same thing on their own. And then at the end, we get everyone together and they kind of present their cases and why they think their organization is important. And they bracket it down until they all agree on one organization based on a student's argument. And these kids are like 12. So it's really impressive, the amount of research and reasoning that goes into this. And then we, as an organization, donate $1,000 on their behalf to the nonprofit that they found that addresses this issue.
I like the thing you said about
That's what we need is critical thinking and empathy. We need those two issues, more of that.
And
Yes.
yeah, that's why I love my job. I got involved in this organization and I care about it so much because I've been thinking about speculative fiction and science fiction and dystopias and futures. And that's why I got involved in the career path that I did.
Well, now, Linda, you deal every day with those young headfuls of mush, as Rush Limbaugh used to call them. Is there any hope for the next generation?
Yes. I find that a lot of the students, they accept things like they accepted that Roe was the law of the land. They accept that equality, marriage equality is the right thing. They accept that men and women are equal. They don't yet see that those things in practice still have roadblocks, but their ideas are there. And as they learn the critical thinking and learn to open their minds, they are going to fight for these things that they've always assumed were right. Because I see so many students that are, they come from privileged backgrounds, but I also see students that are the first in their family to go to college. That's one thing that University of Nevada, Reno has a lot of, is a lot of these first students. First in the pack, I believe, is what we call the program. The Wolf Pack is the sports mascot. And, so we've got people of privilege, we got the people without privilege, and they're coming together in college and starting to have conversations. And so I'm cautiously optimistic if we can survive long enough for them to get in positions of power.
I like it. Now, what about you, Samantha? Hope for the future?
Young people definitely make me hopeful. And, it's just simple things like my youngest child is a 15-year-old non-binary person. And when we watch things together, the stuff that they're just shocked by, like, what? This was considered acceptable? And that's not always a movie from 50 years ago. That's often a movie from 10 years ago, or a television program that's on the air right now. And I really want them to be able to hold on to productive outrage. There's such a thing as, outrage fatigue. And I think a lot of our so-called news cycle is about making sure people are constantly outraged about something that doesn't actually matter.
Yeah.
That way they don't have any outrage energy left when something does matter. And this is where critical thinking, I think, really comes into play, to being able to recognize when you are being manipulated and to getting all upset over whether a mermaid is black instead of something that really matters, like what's happening to Black women, actual ones, not imaginary ones with fins.
Yes, the outrage machine is in full bore, and it was long ago. The manipulators of the world learn to manipulate outrage.
I also think, though, it's important for people my age and older to not just count on young people, right? It's up to us to clear the way for them and to support them, and to make sure that we don't let it keep getting worse before they get far enough along in life to be able to help us make it better. And, we're raising some of those children, and so that's part of our role in it. But it doesn't mean that you get to take a back seat now because, there's some 20-year-olds out there who will save us. They shouldn't have to be alone.
I don't know how many of you guys know this, but we just published a book called Protest Diaries. That came from that came out of my experience when I went down to Portland to join in the protests down there. And hell, I hadn't been tear gassed since I was in the United States Navy 40 years before. And I came back with bear mace and tear gas and a whole handful of rubber bullets that I picked up out of the gutter just for the fun of it the next morning. But I can tell you, we cannot just turn it over to the kids. We've got to lead them. We got to mentor them. We got to work with them. We got to show up too. They've got to show up, but we got to show up along with them.
Mm-hmm.
Anything you want to add to this, Andrew?
No, last time I got tear gas was when the Canucks lost. But as an outsider, I can only give you my support. We vote as much as we can up here. Me and my family volunteer. You got a ways to go.
That we do.
I'll be at a women's march this Saturday, or this upcoming Saturday on the 8th. So we're going to march on Washington again. It's probably going to be smaller than before. Every season it gets a little smaller, but we're all still showing up. So
keep showing up. Because again, if Jim Wright, I'm wait. He's pulling together the file for me right now, but we're going to get it out, and it's going to be called something along the lines of "Show the fuck up, man." That's all we got to do. When people show up at the polls, America wins.
Yes.
When turnout is down, the fascists win.
Mm-hmm.
And that said, we're out of time. And I want to thank each and every one of you for showing up. And so I'm about ready to cut. Is there any last second? Because it's not like I got to go to a commercial break.
Somebody in the chat said they think our book will get banned. I'd love to be in a banned book, so I hope it happens.
I've always prayed to be in a banned book. And by the way, Barb, good morning. Barbara, I love having her showing up. So I'm going to end the stream here, and you're going to